Call the member for Fairfax.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I think the Labor Party has lost the plot. I really have. I think they've gone a bit cuckoo over this one, seriously. I mean, think of the MPI topic they've chosen themselves today. The government's complete failure on energy policy. The government's complete failure on energy policy. I agree, completely cuckoo, Deputy Speaker. And it made me wonder, though, for a moment, which government are they talking about? Which government are they? Because they didn't clarify that, Deputy Speaker. Maybe they're not talking about the federal government, maybe they're talking about the Victorian government, Deputy Speaker. Maybe they're talking about the Victorian Labor government, which of course is responsible for the closure of Hazelwood and continues to have a moratorium on gas exploration. But I might be wrong. I might be wrong. I am wrong, they say. Maybe I'm talking about, I don't know, the South Australian government, Deputy Speaker, another Labor government with a 50% renewable target, the state that has lived in blackouts because of traditional, typical, quintessential Labor policy. 50%. There is a connection. There is a connection indeed, member for Fisher, and I'll get to that shortly. But this is the South Australian government overly reliant on wind that clearly never had the thought that quite possibly at some point the wind may not blow. The wind may not blow. And then what happens? Of course there are blackouts, and the best they can do is try to plug the extension cord into Victoria and suck as much back as they can. But again, I could be wrong, Deputy Speaker. They might be talking about a different government. How about the Queensland State Labor government, Deputy Speaker? Another Labor government that has a 50% renewable target. So this is the Palaszczuk Labor government that continues to price gouge consumers so that they can rip out dividends from the power generating companies, which are government-owned, to cover their own fiscal mess. So in the year 2014-15, Deputy Speaker, the Palaszczuk government hit government-owned enterprises with a bill of $10 billion. $10 billion. That's how bad the Queensland Labor government is. In that same year, you know how much they hit up Powerlink, which of course is a power transmitter? Powerlink in that year earned a net profit of $220 million. $220 million net profit, Powerlink, Queensland, government-owned. Guess how much the Queensland State Labor government took as a dividend? Every single cent of it. Every single cent. And guess what they did then? By ministerial instruction, they directed Powerlink to pay an extra $1.2 billion. $1.2 billion. This is the problem with our power sector. This is a typical Labor government, exactly like Victoria, exactly like South Australia, that will rip out any money it can to cover its own fiscal mess. That's what's happened in Queensland. Now, before my friend and colleague, the member for Fisher, asked, do these governments have something in common? Yes, they do. They're all cuckoo Labor. That's what it is. They're all Labor governments. Now, if you think the only problem lies with the states, look at the Gillard government. Look at the last Labor federal government that gave us the pink bats. That gave us all 4 years ago. And so, therefore, let's forget about it, they say, Deputy Speaker. Full of excuses. They gave us the pink bats. They gave us the carbon tax that the member for Hunter today wanted to recreate. And instead of calling it the carbon tax, what did he call it? The carbon architecture. And he blamed the coalition. The abolition of the so-called carbon architecture has apparently driven up power prices. They are completely deluded, Deputy Speaker. And all I can say is, in the face of such cuckoo Labor governments, thank God right now at the federal level we have a coalition government in control. Because if we did not, they would bring back the carbon tax. They would make sure they only look at renewables. They've made it very clear they want to close all the coal-fired power stations. Typical Labor. Thank God we have a coalition in government.
I call him